So 10 days after the World Cup final, and India and Australia have already played three more T20s. Welcome to the shiny side, where we look ahead to the ongoing series between India and Australia. But before that, we also will look at, I guess, generally speaking, where India goes from here with the T20 World Cup coming up. And as we have Vivek with us after a few days, we will also look back at the World Cup final. So welcome back, Vivek. How are you doing?
Thanks, Faris. Very well. Thanks. Nice to be here again.
So I guess we have to start off with the fact that you were in Ahmedabad for that final. 10 days later, what is the sentiment?
Yeah, I mean, that fateful Sunday. Yeah, you're not going to forget that for a very, very long time.
Sure.
So first of all, that's for sure.
Yeah.
I would say the sentiment's definitely better. There was this palpable nationwide shock on that day, and then the couple of days after, there was millions of postmortems and all kinds of opinions, what happened and why, and all of that. And I think just a genuine disappointment also, like I'd mentioned earlier, right? Like this was the first time where we all felt that it was not just out of some hope and, let's hopefully we'll just turn up well and something nice will happen. Like say, we had made it to the final in 2003. It was a bit like that. Even 2011, I think we played well and won, but I don't think we necessarily expected. And in some ways, maybe we had, I don't know, it just all fell in place, right? This time, I mean, given, as such, the build-up of the team in the last few years anyway, and the fact that we are beating the best of teams in different conditions, and of course, winning through this tournament in very dominating ways. And of course, this whole story of the legacy of Virat and Rohit, and we're all keen to see that. And the best part of everybody was informed. There was no technically weak link. So I think with that, then just to feel that it was natural, I think that there was this tendency of blaming it on everything else. And then eventually it sort of dawns that, I mean, I guess India wasn't as perfect also as we thought it was. And so all of that mixed up, put together. And then at the end of the day, accepting that a game is a game. I think different people are at different places, to be honest. A lot of people are extremely sad and bitter about it. Some of us have moved on. Yeah, of course, these T20s going on maybe are a distraction, but to be honest, that's like a, I mean, I don't know, it's not the same thing, right?
I'm sure, And I guess it's one of those things, right, where we are 10 days in out, right? So I guess it's easier to look at the entire tournament as a whole rather than focus on that one day. So that probably kind of helps put things into context, I imagine.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
And,
but there is, I mean, I would say the positive, and and I was telling you this, I think on the preview show, right, before the final, that while there will be this mountain of hope and expectation, at the same time, I do feel positive about the fact that the audience has matured also significantly, where we're not going to just bitch on everything and then say, guys, I mean, the team was really good, played really well. Unfortunately, fell short.
And really happy to see, I didn't see any news of anyone's house being stoned or any TVs being broken and so on and so forth, right?
2007, you had like crazy, Dhoni's house was stoned. Nothing like that happened. I think everybody genuinely felt for these guys. Of course, I on the final, I did realize certain other things which stayed with me, and I reflected and wrote in that article as well. And I think that's also part of it. And maybe it's gone to the other extreme, to be honest, where I think Indian players at level where they can do no wrong. I think that's a side. I don't know if you want to get into that, but that's another logic. That's another dynamic. That's also
true. And I guess I don't want to get too much into the game. I'm not going to go break down game by game. We've done that already. And for those of you who would like to see the detailed preview, it's going to come up here. But we've done that. Go have a look at that. But I guess for you as somebody in the stadium, is it all a blur now, or do like some key moments stand out for you?
No, obviously, it was there. I carried that sort of the atmosphere for a while, to be honest. It's very intense, and sitting there with 130,000 people, and that noise was reverberating my head for a long time. The silence was as deadly and deafening as the noise itself. It took a few days, and I would say now, and after seeing all the different expert views and clips and thinking and all that, it's a little bit better now. You can, like you said, I think it's a good analysis, and you can see the whole thing in broader perspective. It takes a while to get out of it, but I mean, like I said,
I still
Yeah.
very different
These are
context. But
few key moments. Yeah.
as a Pakistani fan, I still haven't gotten over the '99 final loss. We've lost before, and we lost after, but that was the one that completely like shattered my ego as a fan. So I think sometimes some of these, just like I said, they will always stay with you. They'll always be a part of, like, I guess, the fans' journey.
Yeah.
That's just part of it.
That,
But
true.
I guess, and just a couple close up on the game. I guess, would you say it was? Would you say it's a matter of the fact that, you know, how India, the way India played in the big moments in leading up to the final, in the final, somehow they just played it differently? Was that it, or do you think it was a pure skills thing which in Australia were ahead on the day?
Wow. I mean, obviously, it was a combination of things, right?
Yeah,
I think the fact was that there seemed to be a completely different read of the conditions and how
yeah,
to approach the game on both sides. And I think, you know, whatever home advantage or everything India had, I
yeah,
think full credit to Pat Cummins and his guys. I mean,
yeah,
they obviously read the pitch and
yeah,
the conditions perfectly, right?
yeah,
And I think that's also a fact that, you know, I think which is probably good, which is Indian conditions are not a secret anymore. I mean, because
yeah.
of the IPL and the amount
True.
of cricket like guys play here. So they know this stuff very well. Now, the question is, why didn't the Indian think tank figure that out? I still don't know. It's very hard to say. Were they expecting something else? And that's why they did. I mean, we
I
don't know,
mean,
right?
my honestly, my take is, before we move on, I guess, is that I feel like India in some key moments. So India, you know, the whole the cliche is, you win the power play, you win the game. India kind of won both power plays. They were what,
True.
Rohit got out with one ball to go, and in the
87 for
second play,
2
right?
and 47
But
for
they
3. Yeah.
basically won the first 10 overs of each inning. That was it. But I feel like two key things for me were highlights. If this wasn't a final, if this was a game against Australia, I feel like Sky may not have been demoted. Jadeja may have been sent up. I feel like Siraj would have still opened the bowling. So these things showed, I think, how they just treated it a bit differently, given it was the final. Maybe KL Rahul would have batted a bit differently. Not.
Yeah, yes and no. But to be can give credit to Australia, right? I mean, I think it was like a little chess match. And was quite fascinating to see, you know, something when you're in the stadium, it's there's certain things you don't pick up, you know, when you're just
Yeah,
watching TV. Uh, the um, the discipline with which the ball was being bowled and it was so clear you know they were bowling like to middle and leg, you know, on Rahul's hip, for instance, as an example, and he kept hitting it to the same two people on mid wicket and then finally, so obviously they planned that out, and then with each batsman you could visibly see the field moving around. It
yeah,
was all planned.
yeah,
When Sky came, they got this deep third man so fine. They got that deep fine leg so fine. You knew they're going to bowl that bouncer,
yeah,
and then he's going to go for it. And they made it super slow. And then obviously, it was all going to. So you have to, like, they really nailed the game, right? And yeah, on your day, then all your moves work. I think that's
yeah,
what happened.
yeah,
For India, it seemed to be one after the power play. Power play was good, but they also lost 3 wickets. And then it seemed to be one slip after the other. I guess the key, if you had to put one moment, it was probably Virat Kohli's wicket, because
yeah.
he was playing actually very fluently, the most fluent, I mean, after Rohit. And I mean, and they got 240. Just imagine if he had been there for another 10
Yeah.
overs, which was the template, right? And
And he got a 50 of 60. That's a pretty brisk strike rate given the pitch you were batting on
well, you could
and the
see clearly he was
yeah,
very
yeah,
comfortable.
yeah,
I mean, and he was Rahul was still hitting the ball into the
yeah,
fielders, and they couldn't contain him. I mean, he wasn't hitting boundaries, but he was getting
yeah.
his ones, twos. He was doing really well. It was against the run of play. I mean, you saw that
Completely, completely, yeah,
the inside edge on your day it could have gone
yeah,
somewhere else. That was the big moment. I think that was the moment but there's a very interesting thing, you know, and I also believe that he got out. That was a big thing. But then he stood there, you know, for a while, completely because in disbelief, which is fair because it was completely against the run of play. And then he kept staring at the pitch. And then when I saw the video footage later at home, I thought that, you know, maybe that whole thing just created doubt in the dressing room, you know, like, is there something in the pitch? Is this weird? Like, is maybe just get to 200, this will be
yeah,
fine.
yeah.
There's and
Because at that point there was still 148 with about 20 odd overs to go with the fair wickets in hand, right? So they were still
yeah.
very much in the game at the minimum. If
Yeah, and the way the team had been playing, it was, you would expect it would go on. But I guess there was one factor also maybe that we omitted, or at least I in the past, was that as well as Shreyas Iyer and Rahul and Jadeja and all these guys are, everything was happening when you had Kohli at the other end.
I mean, that's
That was the
something, if
first
you remember,
match
I
where
would
it
bring up in
became.
every episode, right? Like the
Yeah,
number of runs they had added once both Kohli and Rohit went down. This was
yeah.
by far the most they did. They added 90 after they went both of them out. Otherwise, mostly Kohli would be there till the end, and he would try and take them.
I guess
So
that was it, right? Because between them, Rohit and Virat, we had basically 90 odd
yeah,
runs. And
yeah,
if that had been more or Virat had stayed for longer, things.
yeah.
But but there's the other point. Like, let's say India scored 280, right? And then, or 300. I mean, it didn't look like they'll do 320 or something, right? So let's say it went off to, 300 even. It could have been a different game, but you can't say based on
Yeah,
how the pitch
yeah,
played and how also Australia began that Australia couldn't have done it. I
yeah.
mean, like so. I think in the bowling there was also a difference. There seemed to be like a Australia bowled with a lot of discipline and a plan to each batsman, and they had separate fields. India were just basically extremely aggressive, just trying to get a wicket of every ball.
You know,
Somewhere
the classic of
desperation.
the trying too hard situation as opposed to sticking to the plan, right? Yeah.
And that's what happened. I mean, you could sort of see that in the field, right? And then they kind of ran out of gas after, like the
And
18th
by
over or
not
so.
bowling Siraj in the first 8 overs, even I wasn't sure where can they bowl him now, right? Because they suddenly missed
Yeah, I
that
know
border.
guys say that, but you have to give the captain those views, right? Because
Yeah.
I mean, you have to get wickets.
Yeah.
It is a World Cup final. You bring your bowler who's got you the most wickets in the tournament,
Yeah.
and I didn't see anything wrong with that. As long as, of course, Siraj can play the game with the older ball, which is like in that slowish pitch,
Yeah.
bowl
Yeah.
those covers into the pitch and all that. I think he didn't seem like he did that. And but again, they also say that even the Australians say that the pitch was very
Different. Yeah.
different in
Yeah.
the second half with dew. And
True.
we are sitting in the stadium, you could feel it, to be honest. You could feel the sweat on your palms,
Yeah.
and so it's not trivial. I think that whole dew topic. And unfortunately, yeah, Jadeja was completely blunted. He was practically like
Yeah.
no mention. Kuldeep created a little bit of mess, but again, they played it so well. I mean,
Yeah.
like Head and Labuschagne. Labuschagne played such a slow, it was slower than Rahul also.
Yeah.
But they knew exactly what they needed to do,
Yeah.
and that's what would have changed. Suppose it was maybe 300, then Labuschagne couldn't have played like that, and then
True.
maybe things could have happened. But
Yeah. I mean, 50 more would have been I think, a very different game, but who knows what would have happened, right? But again, like you said, we're saying this about the Siraj call, right? But like Dhoni promoted himself above Yuvraj in the final.
Yeah, no, you did.
It
It
made
worked
no
that way.
sense at that time, but it worked, right? So that's just, you
Exactly.
make
No,
these
he
calls.
had
Yeah.
a plan with Murli. He will come in, and why should he expose Yuvraj? But then if it didn't work, we would have said Yuvraj is the player of the
Exactly.
tournament and
Exactly.
all. You have to give the
So,
captain. Rohit's been doing it
yeah,
instinctively
I
really
mean,
well.
yeah.
Won't blame that. But I think the one maybe the overall attitude, right? It seemed like we were sort of like throwing spears every ball, And the previously, the bowling looked more disciplined.
For sure.
And maybe that's where the pressure of a final and
For
the
sure.
desperation
For sure.
and all of that came in. And so what if after the power play also we maybe didn't focus on necessarily taking a wicket every ball, but try to contain them and figure something out. But it didn't seem like that kind of plan was there. So that was
Yeah. I mean, I guess like India and Australia, we're going to switch to T20 mode really quick now. So before we even talk about what happens next, for people who may not follow the team so closely, may not realize since the last T20 World Cup, Rohit and Kohli haven't played a single T20 World Tournament for India, and Hardik has been leading them before this tournament. So, who is the current T20 captain for India in your view? Because it's not a clear answer to that.
I myself don't. I have no idea. I think who's in the team, who is the captain. It's strange. I guess it will be Hardik. I don't think.
I mean, so I guess it seems like Hardik or Rohit, right? So you can either argue they were resting Rohit, and once he comes back in, he will lead the side in T20s, or though getting Hardik leading in all those games, he was going to at some point officially get the baton. So again, where do you sit on that?
It's a bit. There's a lot of press going on. It's a bit difficult, right? The board has announced that they're letting Rohit and Virat decide their futures.
Yeah.
What does that mean? I don't know. And I don't know. So that means if they want to play, they'll play. They don't want, they don't play. I don't know. So then it depends on how much fire they have in their bellies.
Also, I mean, that's whether they play or not. But will they lead or not is the other question, right? Like, will Rohit lead? I mean,
I don't know if I think the first thing is what is the best team, because that's
yeah,
also
for
not so
sure.
clear. Because there are two ways India can approach this, right? One is to say that, listen, now we are going to build a T20 team, and that might look completely different from all the other teams. Take all these young blood and, maybe we'll win this World Cup, maybe we won't, but we have to master the T20 game.
Yeah,
And that honestly requires this different breed of players. You need Rinku Singh and you need, this guy, Yashasvi Jaiswal,
yes,
opening, all that guy. And if you do that, then it's a different looking team, right? Fundamentally. I mean, you are
yeah,
not looking at classical batsmen, but essentially T20,
yeah,
people born and bred on this format. If you start doing that, then, maybe there's no place also for these guys. At
yeah,
the same time, if you say no, I mean, it's still a World Cup, and so let's go with the best pedigree and caliber that we have. And these players are, I mean, they're no slouches with the bat. Obviously, Rohit
yeah.
can score. He's still the best opener in India, anyways. So then they might go with that. But then, obviously, knowing that that's not necessarily building for the future.
Yeah, I
You
mean,
know,
I
so
guess the building for future is also tricky now, right? With the multiple formats, because essentially you have a T20 World Cup in 6 months. India is only playing 11 games, including the series right now. So there isn't a lot of time for anyone to kind of bed in. Now,
yeah.
Rohit, if you look at the way he backed in the ODI World Cup, different format, I get it. But the way he was batting, he would probably get into any top order of any T20 side. Having said that, he has had a pretty lean run with the Mumbai Indians the last season or two. So I guess it's that balance, right? Like you said, is it about your best T20 side, or do you just feel like the guy's class is good enough? And we don't have an
Yeah.
answer probably here.
That they have to only answer. That's
Yeah.
what they're thinking, right? And today they've just announced that Rahul Dravid is retained as the coach for some time,
They haven't
which,
said for how long though, which is a bit, I thought it
yeah,
was a bit surprising. Yeah.
it's all weird here. But I guess it's a good thing, to be honest, because
Yeah.
he's been phenomenal, and now
Yeah.
suddenly you can't just throw him out for one
And
bad match.
2 years isn't that long, right, for a coach either. Like he just got it in the middle of the last cycle. He hasn't had done the full 4 years either, even
I
because
think 2 years.
Shastri was coached till the 2021 T20
They
World Cup.
do, I think in India, they always do these 2-year type contracts, and then they
Yeah.
get renewed. So Shastri had 2 years and it was renewed.
Yeah.
So I think that may be doing the same with
Yeah.
Dravid. And yeah, I guess now if you put two and two together, if Dravid is the coach again for this World Cup, then probably the bias will be to,
Yeah.
maybe go with the old guard for one more
Yeah.
tournament and then move
Yeah,
on.
because I guess I mean, I guess on the 10th of September, 10th of December, India start the T20 series against South Africa. My guess is if Rohit is meant to be captain for the T20 World Cup, he will probably
Yeah.
lead them in that series. So we will know in the next week or so, I guess,
We'll know
once they announce
exactly.
the squad.
Once
Yeah.
this tournament, because it's so
Yeah.
insane, but these boards decided these dates and all that. So you have some second string team, but like what approach, you're right, what they go with the next tournament, we'll know what they're
Yeah.
thinking.
I mean, I guess before we move on from this, I would like my view on this is if it was up to me, I would probably have Rohit and Kohli both in my 11, but I may replace some of the other guys who were there last time around. I think like KL, Rahul, and etc. So I feel like guys like Rinku Singh, Sky, Hardik, if he's fit, of course, and maybe
Yeah.
Shubman Gill at the top need to be there, but I would probably not have uh, KL, Rahul inside and so on. That's what I would do. I'm not sure where you should
Yeah.
on that.
For a T20, probably, Ishan Kishan's a better bet than KL Rahul.
Yeah,
And
for sure.
And then you're right. I think the bowling is obviously weak. You can see that, right, in these yesterday's match as well. I mean, obviously we're relying on Bumrah, Shami. I don't know, Shami will probably not be there. Bumrah, Siraj, and then some of the new guys. Will Chahal come back in? You don't know. They might trust Chahal more for T20 than Kuldeep.
But they didn't play him in this series also. So I think he's been sending cryptic tweets after that. He was left out. But
True. Weird that he wasn't chosen here.
Also, one more thing is the World Cup is in the West Indies. So they're not. I mean, if you look at the CPL, if that's a benchmark, you don't necessarily have these 220 to 40 games. It's much more about 160, 180. So it's sometimes the surfaces can be low and slow. And then there's also some games in the US and no one knows what that's about, to be honest.
Yeah, exactly. You don't know that, right?
Yeah.
And some of the bigger games, like the India-Pakistan one, is New York. So we'll have no idea what that is. I think that's going to be an interesting card as well, right? So what is more bizarre, or I don't know, interesting, is how are they going to come up with 10 new teams? You know that, right? They're going to have 20 teams in the T20 World Cup.
Not from this time around, or is it from this time around?
I
I'm
read
not sure,
that
but I think they already are having these qualifiers ongoing, right? So I know Namibia
they have
qualified
some stuff
yesterday,
going
and
on.
like
Yeah.
Rwanda or Uganda was one of these countries
Uganda,
qualified
maybe,
to. Yeah,
yeah.
yeah,
No, so, but it's going to be different. But I think what's going to happen with not just India, but probably every team, it'll start with the stronger teams first because they just have more bench strength, eventually every team. But I think T20, the format specializations are going to become much more stark. You're going to see more.
yeah.
T20 is very different. I mean,
I
like,
mean, look,
it's,
I think till the last World Cup, when England won, the whole talk was, hey, ODI needs to be played like T20s. But after this World Cup, the talk is, hang on, ODI is a bit more like Test than T20, perhaps, right? So it's
yeah,
like,
exactly.
it also depends on where you're playing and so on
Yeah.
and so forth. Yeah.
Absolutely,
Yeah.
absolutely. I think this World Cup was good. I mean, in a nutshell, while I mean, I guess the jury's still out. Will the one-day format survive? Will there be another one-day World Cup? Oh, but I personally enjoyed. I think the purists like it for sure. I think it's a good tournament, and if you think about it, the you would have to say the top four teams made it to the
Yeah, for
semi-final.
sure.
I think that was right, and there was a show of pretty much all-round skill,
Yeah.
not just the slam bang stuff. So, and the team which finally won was the one which basically had a rounded set of skills, not
Yeah.
just,
And
explosive.
Imran pointed this out in the review that they actually beat everybody in the tournament eventually, because the only two teams Australia lost to were South Africa and India. And to win, they had
Yeah,
to
yeah,
beat
they
them in the
made that up at
semi-final
the
and
end.
final,
Yeah.
eventually. So
But again, there's still another bizarre statistic, right? Like India has won 10 matches and Australia won 9 matches in the whole tournament. So
yeah. I
that's
mean,
also
that I
that's how
guess
it goes.
often happens though in World Cups. Like England last time, I feel like lost more matches than India did in the last World Cup also. But England lost
Last
like three
World Cup
games.
also India won the most.
Yeah, they
Oh
lost.
yeah,
India lost
yeah,
two
that's
games.
it.
England lost 3 games last time around. So
Yeah. So I think India has happened a bit now.
yeah,
When Australia were in this phase in 2003 and 7,
yeah,
they were also winning the final. So
yeah.
that was
True.
so India's the only one where that's not. I think that's going to hurt, and there'll be obviously the juries are, we not the guy's not good enough to are they choking in the finals and all, but I think that's not right. I don't think they choked or anything. I think Australia came better prepared. Obviously somewhere the mindset affected, maybe the
Yeah,
fact that they had more players who'd been in the final. And if you're in the stadium, you could also appreciate this, right? Like I think the crowd pressure and everything may have played against India,
yeah.
because there was so it was too much,
I mean,
and
it's one of those things where I think if you stay on top, it's fine. But if you go down and the crowd becomes quiet,
you go
then
down
it
and the
can probably
crowd's
get to you.
quiet. Exactly. And then that I think can't imagine what's in their heads, but I would think it's like it's this the silence becomes
Yeah, true.
overwhelmingly weight
So
on
it's
your
it's
chest.
hard to kind of take the crowd out of it if it's that contrasting, right? If it's from like super loud to completely quiet, so you can't just
Yeah,
blur it out. I guess as a player, it's probably really hard.
yeah, exactly. I think that
But
also played a role, and
yeah.
just bunch of things.
So I guess let's talk about the current series. And before we move on, by the way, if you like what we talk about, please like the video here, subscribe to the channel. But talking about the series, so with 3 T20s in, it seems like what I think 200. Everyone's scoring 200 in every single game, super high scoring. And if you look at the sides, I think Sky is maybe the only one from India's who is a sure shot in India's T20 11 for the World Cup, who's actually maybe Ishan Kishan. He's probably in the squad definitely. Australia had started off with a bunch of their guys, but now I think Head, Inglis, and Maxwell are the only ones who are left now. But how do you see the series so far, and what's your takeaway from it?
To be honest, it's I mean, I feel it's pretty one-dimensional, and
Yeah,
yeah, yesterday's match was kind of close, but I just feel there's no contest with the ball and the
yeah,
bat,
yeah,
so it's a bit disappointing. I think there's this stark, like whoever's batting second just has this enormous advantage with the dew. It's been playing out as well. Obviously, the bowling on both sides is far
yeah.
from
And
their full
I
speed.
say the drop off in the bowling is it's much more than the batting for both sides,
Yes,
perhaps. Yeah.
exactly. The batting is working out, right? Both teams, to be honest,
Yeah,
not just India, but Australia as well. I
yeah,
mean, have been scoring, and yesterday they pulled off phenomenal chase. So both teams are obviously like high on their batting, but yeah, they're definitely weaker on the bowling side. Um, I don't know. I think bowlers have to come up with, when I think of this format, I guess it's the bigger skill. Maybe the differentiating skill is who's that guy who can bowl and just give maybe like 20, 30 runs in his 4 overs.
Yeah.
That's equivalent to scoring 100. In these matches, that's what it is. The other thing is not the differentiating skill. Who can hit a quick 80 or 1950 balls. Both sides seem to have players to do that.
Yeah. And if you look at Gaikwad, he seems to have he's got a 58 and also 110, both in wins. So he's clearly putting his hand up to be in the squad for, I guess, South Africa, at least, and if not the T20 World Cup after that.
Yeah. These guys I think they know, right? Like it's hard to get their chance in blue. And Gaikwad has been very consistent in the last, I think, 3 or 4 IPLs for Chennai. And he's clearly a nice stroke maker. I think quite effortless. He has what it takes. What Gaikwad is not tested is that if this Australian attack was at full strength, I mean, would he be like Rohit Sharma or a Shubman Gill against these guys? You don't know, maybe, but you don't know. I mean, the other one I think has created more news, just sheer destructive nature which he has played, Jaiswal. And clearly, I mean, I don't know. I'm sure all of this is giving some sort of selection troubles,
For sure.
And it's, again, you're going to have this problem where it's, you can have million views on what is the right 11, but like I said, I think it's fine.
And I think the top 3, the ones who have in possession of the seats are Virat, obviously Rohit Sharma, Shubman Gill, who's also the prince in waiting, and Virat Kohli, right? So there's either whatever call they make will be massive calls. Whoever, and I wouldn't want to be selected.
I guess this tournament, I think the IPL and the South Africa, they're all going to be pretty critical. If I think it will be quite tricky if, like, amongst those top big 3, if somebody has a lean patch in this phase, maybe Virat and all.
Yeah, India is not playing too much either. So they play in South Africa, and then all they have left is 3 T20s against Afghanistan right before the IPL.
Oh, really?
So after December, they're only playing 3 T20s, and then they have the IPL, and then it's the World Cup. So I think the IPL form will probably end up being a factor. Although you would think by then they probably would know who their 13 are, if not 15.
Yeah. So I think that's going to be tricky for these guys to figure that out. I think the bowling is more straightforward. You'll want to keep Bumrah, you'll want to keep Siraj, and then on the spinner side, you'll figure out. And then for the third seamer, again, there are options to figure that out.
So I guess one more thing, and the last thing on this is the next T20 World Cup is in the West Indies. I'm not sure when the last time India, especially a lot of the younger guys probably haven't played a lot in the West Indies. And a lot of other countries have their T20 guys playing in the CPL. Do you think that will be a potential factor for India?
Yeah, that's a good point. I mean, in fact, Indian players are the only ones, because they're formally banned by the BCCI, who don't play T20 in any other conditions, right? Like otherwise, regularly, all the other teams, they play in Australia, Pakistan, Caribbean, even the Sri Lankan League and so on. So in a T20 World Cup, these things can make a difference, So it's true. There could be something to it.
Okay, good stuff, Vivek. Any final thoughts on the rest of the series? What do you want to see India get out of this?
Yeah, I mean, I hope they can figure out the bowling. To be honest, it's been quite disappointing, and just because Bumrah and Shami, they probably won't be there in the next World Cup. I mean, you don't know. And with fast bowlers, they're more injury prone and all that anyway. So suddenly there could be a big void, if you don't have. I mean, there are lots of people who are around, like Avesh Khan or Prasidh Krishna or Deepak Chahar and all. But I mean, there's still just a huge gap between just Bumrah and then these guys. So I think that hopefully, some guys can, put their hands up and come to the plate. I think, it's going to continue to be a batting fest. I don't see that changing in any way. Hopefully India can pull through. That's all. I think it'll be good, and then the players get some good experience. And
I guess so. Sunday is when the series ends, and I feel like by Monday we'll probably know who the captain for the T20 tour to South Africa is. So it essentially means we will know who the captain for the T20 World Cup is for India, most likely. So
yeah. But honestly, the T20 thing is way more open. I mean,
For
like,
sure.
I know, again, India people, of course, we will think that we've got, this huge, great bench line of players and all that. But the reality is that, first of all, T20, the nature of the format is like, it's just one or two quick plays and you win that and you win,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So it's difficult to come back. So that's the first thing, which makes the results always more unpredictable. I mean, look at these matches. Teams are scoring 200 and you still don't know.
Yeah. I mean, the
Till the
T20
last
World
over.
Cup is the only, I think the West Indies is the only team that's won it twice, right? Everybody has won it once. So
Yeah,
it's
yeah.
been what? It's been India, Pakistan, England twice now also. England also won it twice now. But generally speaking, it's really you've had teams haven't been doing so well and still won that tournament. So yeah, like you said, it's
So I think you never know. West Indies might come back and
yeah,
win this one. I mean, everything is possible.
yeah,
So I think India's strength as a team that's why I felt strongly that this ODI is the best chance, because they
yeah,
are more classical players.
yeah,
And that's the best format for them. T20, I don't think necessarily India is going to go in as favorite or anything like that. It will be one of the teams. They will
yeah.
probably have the biggest bench strength, but that may not mean anything on the best 11 who's
Yeah.
playing on the team.
True,
So
true.
probably it'll probably be won by the best bowling team. I mean, literally, like, who can
Best
bowl.
bowling team, especially in those conditions, which is I'm not sure what the answer to that would be, right? But yeah, that's probably what it's going to come down to.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
okay, good stuff, Vivek. Thank you for being on.
Sure, my pleasure. Appreciate it.
And for those of you watching, please like the video, subscribe to the channel, and we'll probably be back on the weekend with some more shiny sides. Stay tuned in the meantime.